Patrick Costello, you have 4 minutes.
And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of this extremely important motion. I thank the Minister for bringing to the House following yesterday's Cabinet meeting. And I think in combination with the hate crime bill that is due to be published this summer, Minister McEntee has clearly showed her leadership on an issue that has always played a nasty part in our society, has been alluded to quite clearly by Deputy Howlin, but has taken an edge in recent years because whilst society has become more accessible, it has allowed people to engage in the sort of hate speech at a level that I don't think it has seen before. And I think there's a couple of areas that I just wanted to refer in my brief 5 minutes. The need for a common EU approach is quite obvious because the world is a much smaller place and we see regularly disinformation, misinformation campaigns and the level of hatred taken in one country exported to another member state. And it's been quite pronounced over recent years and recent debates, and that can be the Brexit discussion, it can be in relation to the rule of law crisis, it can be in relation to the refugee migration crisis, but certainly it's been very stark and be removed not to mention it, Cahirlic, over the most recent weeks following the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia, to see that part of Vladimir Putin's regime of hybrid warfare is hate speech, is the campaign of disinformation that is infecting all of our lives. It's infecting all of our tablets, all of our devices. Yesterday, when I was posting a tweet, like we all do, I went to use the hashtag #IStandWithUkraine, and the first suggested tag was "I stand with Putin." I struggle to believe that this is a popular hashtag in Ireland, and I have to ask why Twitter's algorithm is pushing these messages. Because whilst we're passing this extremely important motion and there will be related legislation, there still remains that absolute abdication of responsibilities by our social media companies in particular when it comes to regulating this area. Our traditional print media have very defined rules. Our national unionist journalists are abide by a very strict code. But I have to say, increasingly, Cahirlic, social media is absolutely becoming the wild west of hate speech. Anyone can say that. And I say that, and not to make it personal, but officially I'm ranked as the 6th most abused politician in the Dáil on Twitter. It's not a badge of honour, it's not particularly pleasant, and whilst we're all grown-ups who can deal with it, it's not very nice reading for my wife or my siblings who perhaps don't get that the comments that are largely sectarian are aimed and coming from not always this state, but many of part. But when we see this particular disinformation campaign and we see how it creeps into mainstream discussion and how people are talking about, oh, well, it's because there's a Nazi regime in Ukraine and that sort of approach, it comes into the very importance of ensuring that, yes, we have a common EU approach, but crucially that this jurisdiction leads. We are proudly the European headquarters for so many of the digital companies, so many of the social media companies, so many of the tech companies, so many of the companies that enable such wonderful things, from sharing holiday pictures to reconnecting with old friends to accessing real-time information, but also, crucially, providing a platform for hate speech that simply is incomparable to the graffiti or the snide remarks that we would have seen a generation ago. And they continue to go, Cahirlic, completely unregulated. So Deputy Howlin's absolutely correct. Passing this motion is a welcome start. I hope to see it get unanimous support of this House, but it is just a start. It needs to be accompanied by real legislation, and even today, despite European sanctions against Russian media operations, despite the banning of Russia today, of Sputnik and everyone else, there still is proactive counts flooding Europe with disinformation about the war in Ukraine. And that is hate speech. It is wrong, and it is why this motion is so important, but equally why the related legislation is so important. And with that, I give way to my colleague, Deputy Costello.